Hey everybody, welcome back to another review, and this time we're going to be talking about more Iron Man Volume 3 within the Kurt Busiek, Sean Chen Iron Man Omnibus. Last time we did numbers 1 through 6, and I said at the end of that I was going to probably do Live, Free, or Die separately, but there's actually not a lot to that story. And I don't know how much of this I'm going to cover it. So this time I'm going to be talking about Iron Man numbers 7 through 10. And I'm going to touch on Live, Free, or Die. I might just kind of summarize it and talk about the Carol Danvers stuff, because that's kind of the only thing that matters. And then just go to the second part, which is Iron Man 8, 9, and 10. 8's the opening to the story, and then 9 and 10 are the two-part Revenge of the Mandarin. Dividing this up has actually been kind of tricky because of the way Kurt Busiek writes. So I'm going to try my best to go through this almost issue by issue and talk about everything that happened here. So we open this up with Iron Man number 7, which is the first of 4 parts of Live, Free, or Die. Live, Free, or Die goes through Iron Man, goes through Captain America, Quicksilver, and then Avengers. Captain America at this point is being written by Mark Waid. He just came back to the book after Heroes Are Born, and he had a run before Heroes Are Born as well. We also have Quicksilver being done by John Ostrander, which I didn't know there was a Quicksilver ongoing done by John Ostrander. I've never heard anyone ever talk about it. I like John Ostrander. He's one of my favorite writers. I've read a lot of his stuff, and I've never known that he had a Quicksilver ongoing. So he's doing that, and then Busiek's obviously doing both Iron Man and Avengers. There's actually quite a bit of a back and forth between those two books in this set of issues. So basically what we have here in Live, Free, or Die is the story arc with the Kree before this had the Avengers decide to kill the Supreme Intelligence. And here we discover that the Supreme Intelligence is not actually dead, and this small subset of Kree fanatics called the Lunatic Legion, which I don't know why you'd call yourself the Lunatic Legion. You might just want to call yourself the Kree Legion or something. It's weird that you'd degrade yourself in your name, but whatever. The Lunatic Legion is working with the Supreme Intelligence to take revenge on the Earth and the Avengers, and they're going through all 4 of these issues, stealing parts to one big master plan. So while that's going on, Iron Man's going to visit Carol Danvers. And if you haven't been reading the Avengers book that Busiek was doing along the same time, Carol Danvers has gone through some really tough times. She's got a really complicated history, and I don't mean complicated in the sense that there's decades and decades of material that doesn't line up. I mean more so in the sense that, within, a decade, maybe 2 at most, she's gone through, 100 different changes. There is a lot between her being in the Air Force and becoming Miss Marvel, and becoming Warbird, as she's called in this, and then she has this weird star power thing. She goes by Binary at one point. There is just a really complicated history of her. And Kurt Busiek is trying to streamline that because this is a writer that loves continuity. So during the stuff that's going on with Avengers, she's kind of flipped on Captain America. She's losing her powers. She's got this thing where she loves being in the sky. She loves going up into the stars, and as she's losing that more and more, and as she's dealing with the things she's gone through in the past, she's become an alcoholic. And she's at the point where she hasn't admitted that to herself yet. And so Iron Man shows up to talk to her because obviously Iron Man, being an alcoholic, thinks he's got some sort of way to at least talk about this reasonably with her, and she's not there yet. She's still kind of uncontrollable. So we run through all of Miss Marvel's history, and obviously Tony doesn't make any headway with her, so he decides, okay, let's forget this, let's go to a company called Power Source, to talk about some information that he needs in relation to the guys that have been attacking him in the previous set of issues. While he's there, a drunk Carol Danvers in costume with her powers goes after Tony Stark because she's pissed at how he confronted her. And in her attacking power source, they uncover the Kree think that the Avengers are onto them, and so they attack. And we find out that the power source building that's being run by this woman is about to go bankrupt, and so she makes a deal with the Kree to make a power generator for them. And since they think they're being attacked, all their plans go out in the open, which is kind of convenient. So Iron Man and Carol Danvers try to take care of the Kree, but what eventually happens is that Carol Danvers decides to just kind of recklessly attack everything and go after the Kree, as opposed to dealing with the civilian casualties, which becomes sort of a trend going forward. And so Iron Man's trying to save people as best he can. He's fighting Kree soldiers and such, and he's trying to take debris away from people. And he's as successful as possible. And while he's trying to do that, Carol Danvers flies off to go after the Kree. And when we get there, that's the end of the Iron Man issue, and then we go to the Captain America issue, which is the second part of the story. And in the Captain America issue, there's lots of stuff with Mark Waid's book. But what we essentially find out is the base that Carol Danvers is tracking the Kree to is kind of like a Nazi internment camp. And what they're doing at the camp is they're taking the Inhuman Terrigen Mist and putting it on people, and they're trying to create the same kind of effects that Carol Danvers has, namely make a hybrid between the Kree and humans that possess the same powers that she does, in order to raise their army. And so this camp is they keep gassing people, and they keep dying because their bodies aren't able to evolve the way they need them to. And so Carol Danvers is there attacking that base, and then she calls Captain America for help. I don't touch on the political stuff Captain America is dealing with because it's all in relation to his own story. I might actually go back eventually and review the Busiek Avengers stuff and the Mark Waid Captain America stuff separately. But there's tie-ins to all of that I won't really go over right now. So she's attacking the Kree. She calls Captain America for help. She lies and says that she already called the other Avengers. And when Captain America shows up, he finds out that's not true. And we have exactly the same sort of situation going on, where Captain America is more interested in helping civilians and getting people out of danger, and Carol Danvers is more interested in just going after the Kree, trying to prove to herself that she's still useful. She's not drunk anymore. She's kind of sobered up, but she's still kind of erratic. And in trying to capture the Kree and Captain America trying to save the civilians, Carol Danvers gets captured and taken into space. Which basically ends the Captain America issue, and then we go on to the Quicksilver issue. And the Quicksilver issue is essentially Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Hawkeye taking a Quinjet to the moon to try and save Carol Danvers. And they also have Lockjaw of the Inhumans with them. And so they go into space and they attack the Kree base, and we find out basically what's going on with the Kree's plot. And they've got this weapon that they're going to shoot at Earth, because now they've perfected what they need with the Terrigen Mist to make it so that all the humans turn into Kree, and then they're going to use that to basically rebuild their empire. So the idea here is save Carol, take out the machine. And as they do that, they save Carol, and Carol is extremely weak. Her powers has been nearly completely depleted because she's much weaker than she used to be. And while she's just there, she keeps saying that she needs one more drink. And Quicksilver is basically saying that she's no use to us right now, so let's just kind of let her rest here while we take out the Kree and then take her back to Earth. And in the middle of that, she just drinks a random liquid inside of the Kree facility, and she gets drunk off of it and gets her powers restored. It's almost as if her powers are directly related to how much alcohol she consumes, and she really becomes an alcoholic. So she goes around flying around with her powers while drunk and just starts shooting everything. She seriously hurts Lockjaw. She basically destabilizes the whole building, and she thinks she saved the day, and she hasn't. And it's a kind of a terrifying image, because you know she's not in control of her faculties. You know this is not how she used to behave. You know how this is not what an Avenger should be doing. but she doesn't see it. She's just so completely clouded. It's exactly the same thing as what Tony Stark went through back in the Michelani-Leighton stuff, and a little bit through Dennis O'Neil stuff. The Dennis O'Neil stuff is not the same kind of thing, because at that point he's accepted he's an alcoholic and he just is trying to recover and doesn't. That stuff's more relapse. This is more clearly demon in a bottle kind of stuff, and the parallels are really striking. And you really want to be on her side throughout all of this, but she's just making it really difficult. And so after she hurts Lockjaw and they take out the base, they decide that they're able to finally get back to Earth, and they think the Kree have been defeated. But the Kree have just enough of the Terrigen Mist to move forward with their plans. Then you get to the main Avengers issue, which is basically a trial for Carol Danvers. And they're all confronting her and giving testimony as to whether or not Carol is in control of her faculties, whether or not she deserves to be an Avenger. And at the end of the day, they decide that all of us have gone through similar things. All of the Avengers at some point or another have had their powers weakened or taken away from them. All of them have had life issues that interfere with their judgment. Tony Stark being the perfect symbol of that. Captain America at this point having just gotten his super soldier serum back. All of these characters have gone through what Carol's going through, and so they recognize what she needs. But because she's being so difficult, they kind of make it more formal and make it almost like a trial. And it's sort of supposed to be an intervention that doesn't completely go off the way they want it to, and Carol decides to quit. There's one big battle with the Kree where the Avengers are able to win, and Carol tries to join in because basically she's locked on Earth. She's out of the Avengers, and she thinks that she's going to be able to show up and save the day because they need her, that she's the one that's been like the motivating force behind taking up the Kree, and the Avengers do it without her, and it really destroys her confidence in herself. And at that point, she's just kind of isolated. It's the exact same kind of isolation that we got with the original Demon in a Bottle stuff. And so all of that's really well handled. It's all really interesting. And I really like how subtle Busiek is with a lot of this. Here in Live, Free or Die, all of it's more explicit because we've already developed Carol to this place in his Avengers stuff and in some stuff before this. And so Busiek is basically just pushing that Carol Danvers storyline forward, and we'll get more of her in the next set of issues when we talk about her, both what Iron Man's going through and what she's going through and how he helps her through it. So that basically closes out Live, Free or Die. It's not a very good story. It's actually kind of boring and none of it matters. The only thing about it that you should go through and read is all of the stuff with Carol Danvers. It's essentially just another dumb 90s event, but Busiek, Wade, and Ostrander use her as their through line, and she becomes more important both in the Avengers book and in the Iron Man book. I almost feel like I should be reviewing both Iron Man and Avengers together, as the issues pair up. But that would just be too much material to cover. I'd only have to the only way I'd be able to make that work is 2 issues of Avengers, 2 issues of Iron Man at a time. It would just be too complicated. But there's a lot of stuff that goes back and forth with Busiek and Carol Danvers going forward because of this event, but the event itself is not important. Then we get to Iron Man number 8, which is the big kind of turning point issue for what Tony's dealing with. We have Whiplash coming back and attacking Tony. He's got a really dumb costume. There's some stuff going on with him with his children and his wife that happened in another book that kind of factors into this, and we learn later that what's happened with both Whiplash and a couple other characters that have attacked Tony isn't related to what's going on into the bigger plot. The stuff with Firebrand, the stuff at the opening of this when Tony's being attacked and such, all of that has to do with the Mandarin, but the stuff related to Whiplash does not. And so there's 2 people attacking Tony at the same time when we assumed that there was just one. So basically what we got at the end of issue 6 was that Tony was going to go full force against this person that was attacking him, and that got interrupted with number 7 in Live, Free or Die. But he gets some information from Power Source in Iron Man number 7, and here he goes to Paris to a woman that we haven't seen since the Michelani-Leighton and Dennis O'Neil years. She's the woman that used to be vice president of Stark Enterprises, used to run Stark Enterprises in Paris, and now she runs Stark Fujikawa in Paris. And so Iron Man goes to visit her, and she's been his aide going through all this information and trying to figure out who is this person attacking Tony Stark. And as he's going through that, he finally figures out that it's the Mandarin. And as he does, he gets attacked by a death squadron. And he sees Spy Master. And so all the stuff with the spy at Stark Solutions, planting bugs, working with Happy Hogan, finally comes to a head there. And Tony Stark gets the crap kicked out of him. He gets beaten to an inch of his life. Black Widow shows up and saves him. But the first thing Tony asks for, to go with this armor addiction idea, the first thing Tony asks for as he's laying there beaten to a pulp, as Black Widow is begging him to be taken to a hospital, the first thing he asks her to do is go back and find his suitcase with his armor. And so she does, and him just being completely critically injured, puts his armor on and decides to go full speed ahead and attack the Mandarin. Now, the Mandarin we haven't seen since Hands of the Mandarin in the Len Kaminski run. What happened at the end of that is sort of recapped here. There was like a technology virus. There was this thing called the Heart of Darkness that essentially made it so the technology didn't work. It was adapted into the Iron Man animated series, the second season of that. I think it was the series finale, actually. Iron Man beats him by installing the technology virus into him, and then we get this kind of cliffhanger thing where now the Mandarin's been like almost reincarnated as a janitor at a company. And Kurt Busiek's explanation for why Mandarin is back, or how he got his powers back, is essentially that he was a janitor, and then he became the Mandarin again. That altogether isn't exactly a satisfying answer to where the Mandarin's been, or how he got his powers back, or what happened to his rings, or explain how he became a janitor at the end of that in the first place, but whatever. I'll roll with it. It's a comic. And, I mean, the Mandarin's one of those characters that quote-unquote dies almost every time he shows up. He's presumed dead at the end of this, and Busiek says that... Busiek as Iron Man say, well, we're going to think he's dead, but he's going to show back up again. Iron Man literally says that. But he's presumed dead at the end of this. He's presumed dead at the end of Hands of the Mandarin. He's presumed dead at the end of the Dragon Seed Saga. He's presumed dead at the end of... The early stuff where he first showed up. He's presumed dead at the end of I think it's the Dennis O'Neil run, where he shows up and he's got like this plan to blow up a vibranium mound or something. I think that's the Dennis O'Neil run. But he's just one of those characters. He always just seems to die and come back. So this is now issues 9 and 10, which are Revenge of the Mandarin. And essentially, Tony takes his armor, flies off to find the Mandarin, and we find out that the thing from issue 6, when Tony was kidnapped and was forced to build circuits and stuff for this forced labor camp, we find out all that was being used to build basically the Iron Man equivalent of Serpentera. Basically, imagine Serpentera and Fin Fang Foom fused together, and you'd get this, which is essentially the Mandarin's Dragon of Heaven, as he calls it. Why did he build this? Why is it a giant dragon? Why does he need it? Why is it a part of his plan that it gets all blown to hell by the end? I don't know. And I don't know how to explain it any better than that. The Mandarin's big elaborate conspiracy was there for this payoff. And the Mandarin at the end of this is acting like he won. The Mandarin is very clearly at the end of this just setting up this perfect scenario for his comeback, and to still see whether or not Iron Man and Tony Stark are worthy adversaries. He learns at the end of, or in the middle of Hands of the Mandarin, that Iron Man is Tony Stark, and he has kind of like a breakdown over it. Like, it's so bizarre to him that Tony Stark would be Iron Man. And then with the Heroes Are Born thing, Tony Stark's presumed dead, so he figures Iron Man's dead. But then Tony comes back, and so him being tested through this is kind of the Mandarin's way of, like, making Tony go through, like, an approval process to still be his arch nemesis. And so he goes through this little giant, overly elaborate conspiracy, building this ridiculous dragon contraption to test Iron Man, and it's ridiculous and hilarious, and I love it. That's kind of exactly what the Mandarin should be, and I love that kind of stuff. So the real depth of this, the real interesting thing with the Dragon of Heaven stuff and Tony being inside the Mandarin and talking with him and such, the real interesting thing here is it cashes in on more of that business theme. We had that with the end of issue 4 and 5 in the earlier part of this, with Firebrand, with the whole idea of Stark Solutions. And Mandarin is basically saying here that, Tony Stark, you are not my enemy. You are not really my opposite. I've been on this quest for years to like reinstate feudalism and create a system of hierarchy where only the elite are on top, and create this culture of subservience to one to like some almost fascist power. And I've been a fool not realizing that it's already there. The Mandarin has like this really great moment of clarity, which he seems to always have that. He had a moment of clarity at the end of the Dragon Seed Saga, or he had a moment of clarity that led to the Dragon Seed Saga. He had a moment of clarity that led to the Hands of the Mandarin, and he has it here again with Revenge of the Mandarin. But whatever, consistency, I guess. So he says he has this moment of clarity here, where he basically realizes that his goal of setting humanity back to like this feudalist slave relationship has already been accomplished. That the way business works and the way capitalism has grown in the West is exactly what the kind of feudalism he wants. He basically argues to Tony that you have made my plan a success for me, and I just haven't realized it. And Tony keeps spouting this rhetoric of like, well, that's not true, that's not how it works, and both he and the Mandarin realize that that's just denial. And again, that's part of the whole Stark Solutions thing, is that Tony wants to be out of that cycle. Tony wants to break away from that. Tony wants to, within the system, be in the system as small as possible in order to help people that are disenfranchised by it. And that's always been his mantra. And he's just not able to admit to the Mandarin that he's been doing things the wrong way for so long. And the Mandarin's just kind of having a ball with this. Like, he's loving this. He's loving taunting Tony. He's loving the giant dragon. He's loving this needless invasion of Russia. He's just having a blast. And Tony being beaten to an inch of his life before this, being in the armor, and the armor's got blood all over the inside and outside of it. Tony being told that he's basically the Mandarin's plans in a successful form. He's never realized it. Like, the Mandarin is just almost having a Joker moment for a lot of this, and it's so much fun to read. And it's kind of the perfect example of making interesting psychological character drama with ridiculous comic book concepts. That's the one thing about Kurt Busiek that I consistently love, is that he's able to craft really dense character relationships, really dense psychologies, really dense juggling acts of multiple characters and multiple relationships and multiple ideas, and put it within the context of absolutely ridiculous comic bookiness. It's so much fun to see that. It's so much fun to see Iron Man be given this fascinating speech about the nature of the world and the politics of it, and the problems of business and such, while he's inside of a giant mechanical dragon that's attacking the Avengers in Russia. Like, it's just kind of cool. It's so much fun. I really like it. I also really dig the Mandarin's new look. He gets kind of a pseudo-updated costume every time he shows up. The Dennis O'Neil Mandarin costume is awful. This one's actually really cool. It reminds me more of what Kaminsky's Mandarin looked like, but still a little bit more updated. So essentially, Iron Man's able to take down the dragon. The Avengers are able to help the Russian equivalent of the Avengers take off the Mandarin's forces. The Mandarin is presumed dead, but Tony at the end of this is like, no, he's not dead. He's coming back. You're going to find a body, you're going to confirm that it's him, we're going to put him on the dead list, and then he's going to come back laughing at us because we were wrong. And Tony just at the end of this is kind of fed up with things. and he's angry about it, but it's really interesting, and I really like that. Because, again, we are furthering the armor addiction, we're furthering the point of Stark Solutions in the first place, and now we're advancing the idea that Tony's being attacked on all sides yet again. And it's more of a repeat of the Iron Man cycle, but it's very self-aware of that. And again, Busiek loves continuity, so that all really works. So this set of issues is great. 7 through 10 is great. Live, Free, or Die, I'd recommend just skipping it. If you want to, the one thing you should potentially read is the Avengers issue of Live, Free, or Die. Read Iron Man 7 through 10, and then throw in the Avengers issue between 7 and 8. So you get the trial of Carol Danvers from the Avengers' point of view, and then you have the history of Carol Danvers in Iron Man number 7, and that'll give you a perfect overview of where her character is, what's been going on, and how she factors into the rest of both the Avengers run and the Iron Man run. So Live, Free, or Die, just forget about that aside from those two elements. And then Revenge of the Mandarin's a lot of fun. I really like it. I don't know if it's my favorite Mandarin story yet. I really like the Mandarin stuff that we get later with Matt Fraction, but as far as reading Iron Man up to this point, from everything we've seen from Volume 1 up to this point, I really like this. I like how streamlined it is, because I liked Hands of the Mandarin, but I liked Hands of the Mandarin in the Iron Man bits of it only. I felt the rest of it was just padding. This only being a 2-issue story that's just built up throughout the rest of the comics, I think works better, and I really enjoy it. It's got spectacular art, it's got spectacular action, it's, again, cashing in on more of the psychological issues of Tony Stark. So I really like it. I think it's really good. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with anything I said. I will be back next time. I think I'm going to do 11 through 17 next. There's actually quite a bit of stuff back and forth here. There's lots of material in this omnibus that isn't just strictly Iron Man, so that number might change. But I will be back with you doing more Iron Man comics in the future. So thanks everybody for listening, and I'll see you next time.